Raging Fire is a crime thriller action movie directed by Benny Chan. I didn't know anything about this movie going in really, except that Donnie Yen was in it, and it would be Benny Chan's last movie. I am no stranger to this director. I've seen actually like 10 of his movies, from his for early ones like A Moment of Romance all the way to 2016's Call of Heroes. I'm very familiar with this director. He does a lot of action movies that are entertaining. Sometimes they're, not that great, but I just, had an open mind. And as the credits were rolling for this movie, I noticed that Donnie Yen produced it, but he also stars in it. He also was the action director. So I was, kind of hopeful that the movie would have some pretty sweet action sequences. However, the movie is a raging mess. Raging Fire tells the story of Bong Chung. He is a dutiful police inspector with a pregnant wife, very cliche, and he is dealing with a mass group of individual vigilantes who have busted up a drug deal gone wrong, killed police officers and both sides of the drug deal, and they may be linked to a group of 6 ex-cops who were put in prison for something that happened in the past. We're not really told this except through long, languishing flashbacks that are really melodramatic. There's not much room for nuance as well. It's not like, Bong could have lied, because I guess they're expecting him to just sort of like cover it up, but he didn't. And these 6 ex-cops become betrayed, so they decide to take revenge on the people that wronged them. In their eyes, they're very righteous, they're very skilled, and the movie has terrific action sequences. There's 3 amazing action sequences. The opening shootout in the mall. There's a sort of slum-like fight that's very reminiscent of Buy Bust or The Raid. And then the action finale has a big shootout that's really messy. It just copies Heat. And then there's like a fight scene at the end, which is the highlight and the climax of the film. So Donnie Yen does a great job as action director. He does. Usually he's really good. Him or Sammo Hung, if they're doing the action, the movie's great. So the movie has great fight scenes. Those 3 action sequences I mentioned. He probably didn't do the opening one with the shootout, but he did the one with the in the slum and the finale in the church. The movie was trying to do like this old school throwback to those 80s and 90s Hong Kong action thrillers. However, it doesn't really make that apparent. And I remember I was looking up stuff about the movie because I wanted to know who was in it, and this one reviewer said it was really great because it is a throwback to those sort of crime thrillers of old, but the movie doesn't feel fresh. It's not really the sort of vibe that people are into now. People are into gritty action rated R movies, and the movie often wrangles with itself because there are characters that get shot right in the head and the blood just dripping down their forehead. But then the movie is also full of unintentional misogyny. For example, Bong Chung's wife is pregnant, but she doesn't have any characterization besides being pregnant and she's just there to be, someone, a target for others. And then there's this female character that gets introduced and choked out in the same scene because she's like a money-grubbing, vicious harpy. And then, her death spurs on the cops to do something. And so a lot of cliches in there, a lot of bad characterization. For example, the villains themselves don't have much of a motivation. They went to prison, but you're never actually shown how bad of a time they had in prison or anything like that. We only get the melodramatic flashbacks of like them going to court and everything like that. And like the hero doesn't have the greatest motivation to take down them either, even though they did know each other, they used to hang out, there is that familiarity, but there doesn't seem to be a driving force of, it's missing that sort of characterization. Same goes for Bong Chung's, his group of detectives. There's like 4 or 5 of them. They're never given any names. There's the female, there's the hothead, and then there's like 2 or 3 others that are just there, and they're just there. And they're never introduced or developed at all. The movie doesn't take time to do that, so they're kind of just like, it might as well be cardboard cutouts because they're just sort of there. And Donnie Yen does have like this spineless boss, I guess. That's a pretty interesting character, but he's underutilized as well. The movie borrows from other action movies like Heat and things like that. But the main thing is that Benny Chan wrote and directed this movie, so it's not the greatest script. It's got really on-the-nose dialogue, characters, saying like, hey, I haven't seen you, we've been in prison, or they mention that they were in prison together in the middle of a conversation so that the audience knows. It's obviously for the audience. And there's also a lacking tension and suspense because we know who the group of mass vigilantes are, because they sort of show that up front in the first scene. So there's no doubt, there's no mystery, there's no sense of like, are they actually, you know, like the group? They are. And so there's no like, you know, doubt. So it's kind of like all out in the open. And there's a lot of cheese as well. There's a little, you can see the little touches of homages to John Woo. It's trying to go for that. Like there's a fight in a church. There's a scene where Donnie Yen dual wields 2 pistols. But the movie, you know, never tries to put that on its sleeve, that it's supposed to be like just an old-fashioned slam-bang action flick, because there isn't enough action. For one thing, there's only like 3 action sequences spread out throughout 2 hours. The pacing is quite terrible, and the movie never tries to just be like, you know, Donnie Yen's a hot-headed cop trying to take down this group of ex-cops, but that doesn't seem to be the main focus. They keep going on different tangents and doing all these things. Also, the villains themselves have a lot of plot armor. They seem to be really omnipotent and like powerful, never being shot or killed whenever they don't need to. The movie just didn't work for me. I was the only one in the theater except for this older Asian man who was sitting a couple rows ahead of me. He left within 30 minutes. He had popcorn too. He just got up and left, and I was like, what? And then after, you know, an hour in the movie, I was like, oh, okay, this movie has nothing going for it. You know, I mean, Donnie Yen's in it, but it's not like an amazing performance except for its physicality and the fight scenes. But the movie needed to be tighter and more like robust. If they're going to be a homage to like an 80s or 90s action thriller like a John Woo movie, then you need to have a lot more shootouts. You need to have a lot more yelling. You need to have a lot more, because it felt like a drama with occasional action elements. You know, everything seemed to clash with each other. You know. You get this amazing, hard-hitting action sequence in a slum, and then they cut to like, you know, a melodramatic bomb scene, or like flashbacks that are really long, and characters looking at each other, and just there's no theme either. You know, there's no like point of the story really. It's not like, I mean, the main villain's played by Nicholas Say, and he's pretty good, but like he doesn't have much motivation at all. In fact, they kind of need to rearrange everything, because nothing really worked except for the action sequences, but it just felt like different snippets of different movies chucked together, because it's trying to be like a modern day violent action thriller, but it's also trying to be a throwback to like John Woo and Johnny To, but it's also got like the modern action sequences of like Flashpoint or SPL, because, you know, Donnie Yen's doing the hard-hitting choreography. And so the movie just has so many tonal shifts and styles, it just doesn't really work. I do like the director, and it is sad that he passed and this is his last film, but I didn't really have much of regard for his last film, Call of Heroes. That was another movie that kind of didn't do it for me, but people were like, this is supposed to be like a, you know, a throwback to those classic martial arts movies, but it's so full of CGI and it just didn't really work. So Raging Fire was just a misfire for me. It does have Donnie Yen in it. That's the reason why I watched it, but it just didn't really work in any capacity. The pacing's too slow. You know, someone, you know, might say, oh, is it worth you know, a watch if you're a hardcore action fan or a hardcore Donnie Yen fan? Honestly, not really. I mean, maybe find the fight scene on YouTube or something, but it's not worth the 2-hour running time. I used a coupon instead of watching this movie and paying for it. I'm glad I did, but I should have left when the old man did. So I give Raging Fire a 2 out of 10.